Hello, all you cats and kittens. Welcome to ADD Masterminds. Are we still doing that? The cats and kit that has to do with that reality show I never watched, right?
Yes, that's a Tiger King. And I think it's been long enough that it's like a throwback now. So I think it's okay.
It's a throwback now. So
It's
it's not like
classic.
I'm behind the trend. It's like I'm being cool in
Yes,
some way by
exactly. It's
being
retro.
retro or
Mhm.
whatever. Speaking of retro,
Yeah.
oh, hey, we should introduce ourselves. I'm Bridge Livwat, and
I'm
this
the
is
girl.
The Girl. That's
I'm
her real
Bethany.
name.
It
That's like
is. Birth
her
certificate.
Christian name is The Girl.
He's baptized as the girl.
So welcome, cats and
Yeah.
kittens, and maybe some dogs. I don't know, like
I
whatever.
mean, it as as introductions go, it's very inclusive.
Yeah,
Just it's cats and kittens.
not to get
Substitute
political.
what you want. No, never. No.
Hamsters,
Hamsters
mm. All of God's creatures come
are
together
welcome here.
and let's ADD mastermind together.
That's right.
This is your this is your safe space to be ADD. Oh, I said safe space. Dang it. Okay. There's so many like political things. Okay, so Keanu Reeves. You wanted to
Yes.
talk about Keanu Reeves.
I I just can't get over that, Matthew Perry in this book that I was totally going to read
Mm.
because I love a good memoir. Had felt the need to like dunk on him twice to be like,
Oh, I
this
didn't know that
actor
was
died.
twice.
Apparently it's two times in the book that he's like this one died and this one was so like talented and wonderful, yet Keanu Reeves walks among us. And then a second time, yet Keanu Reeves walks among us. And I'm like, barring the fact that by all accounts, Keanu is a delightful human being who like takes the subway and funds children's hospitals and has suffered great loss. Like, why anybody? Why was that smart to say about anyone? Did no one read this book before it went to press? Did he not show it to his friends? Did he not have an editor? Like, I just don't know how eyes get on this page and don't go, dude, Keanu's great. Or if you pick literal Richard Kind, yet he walks among us, like just pick some, like even if he picked anybody, what was the need for that? And he's now apologized, but
Yeah.
the book's out there. It's going to be there forever. It's just a weird choice for
I've
me.
never like understood how someone puts something in writing like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, no, I didn't read it before I like even a tweet. I'm like, you didn't read
Right.
that before you sent it out. Like,
Right.
and I'd say everything I have put out there, I've deliberately put out there.
Yeah.
And and we'll get into like a little bit about
Sure.
troll accounts and stuff like that. And I regret having any troll accounts, but like everything I said was strategic anyways. There's no
Right.
point where I'm like, oh, I wasn't thinking when I said this. It's like you
Yeah.
read it before you post it. So when you write a book, it's like you read it before you publish it.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time working on it.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's messed up.
Yeah. And I mean, this kind of goes into like, okay, first of all, Keanu Reeves is an interesting one because I remember in the era of Friends, it
Mhm.
was like Keanu Reeves did like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and he was just a stoner character. And I remember around that time, it's like Keanu Reeves is now doing Shakespeare, and I'm like, that's such a joke. It's like
Yeah.
I don't
Like
even
I don't
know what
I don't think
light,
anyone's
what
ever
light
claimed he
from
was
yonder
good.
breaks. Like
Yeah,
his whole like it's like it felt like he played the same character every time. And so I
definitely.
remember that like back then it's like, yeah, this guy's, I would have written him off as a doofus back then.
Sure.
And so I kind of see where, he would, think of like Keanu Reeves as not as talented as people that died. Not
Okay.
that
So
I'm
like
justifying what he said, because I
like
don't think you should
Matthew
say that
Perry's
about
writing
anyone.
this book in like 1998. Like maybe
Oh,
in
did he?
1998 it would have flown.
I think he was like, okay, so I haven't really delved into this, but I took it as he was talking about when those people died. He was
Okay.
thinking, how is Keanu still alive? Right. And
Okay.
so I think that's the framing. And so I'm like, the framing, if I can frame it that way, it makes a bit more sense, but it still
Okay.
makes him sound like a person who's very petty. Cause it's like,
Yeah.
why would you ever,
Okay.
like, just don't talk about someone else's death and hope, say this person should
Right.
have died instead. Like,
Right.
that's the very definition of hate.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no reason for that. And it's like, why are we like this?
Yeah. Yeah. No, someone had said that to me when my grandfather passed, who was a wonderful, wonderful person.
Mm-hmm.
And, someone who knew and loved him as well was like, I don't know, we saw somebody who was just not who was elderly and not doing well and not very kind. And he was like, this guy is still here, but your gramps has to die. And I was like, that doesn't actually help me. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't come across what you think it does, just it's not one or the other like that. But I can see that maybe being his thought then of like this
Yeah.
friend of mine and this friend of mine's gone, but this doofus is still around. Okay.
Yeah.
But
And I love how like our image of Keanu has changed so much over time, because now
yeah,
we look at him and he's a wonderful human being.
right.
And I'm like, that's beautiful. I guess part of it too is like, I don't know why we are so quick to judge people. And as a society, we decided in the 90s, Keanu was a doofus.
Right.
And then in modern times, he's a saint. And it's like, will that change again? Because I mean, look at Bill Murray. It's like he
Hmm.
was a saint for such a long time. And now all this stuff's coming out. And it's like, oh, we're not going to see him as a saint anymore, are we? Right.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know. Like, we're always analyzing each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to learn to stop analyzing people and just love them.
Yeah. I I mean, did we just not know? I mean, not to harp on him specifically, did we just not know that much about him in the 90s? So we were basing it off of his roles and his movies and whatever. And now it's like, oh, but he's a real person who eats sandwiches by himself on a park bench and becomes a meme, like now we
I
know that he's a good person because he's a person.
I guess, but I mean, like, I don't still don't think we know him,
No,
right?
no,
Just like people don't know me,
no,
right? And
sir.
so it's like
You say
I'm
you're Canadian. I don't know where you went.
I think we make so many assumptions, and it's like I love I went to this William Jennings lecture,
Mm,
and I can't remember if I talked about this before on the show, but one of the things that he talked about, like, a lot of it is about being a learner. And
mm,
it's like, how powerful would it be if someone said, no one listens like a Christian? Because it's like we spend
mm,
so much time trying to teach people about our faith because our faith is perfect in every way. When in reality, it's like, well, what if we were willing to learn? Like, people will listen to what you have to say if you're willing to listen to what they have to say.
yeah.
And I mean, I think it's difficult though to form real relationships and be genuinely willing to learn from people if you've already decided you have all the right conclusions on everything.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
so there's that. And then on top of that, somebody said, but what if somebody has these terrible points of view and they're just horrible people? What do you do with that? How do you, like, I don't want to learn from that person.
Right.
Right. And he said, well, why don't you start with this? Where are you from? And what did your mama call you when you were little?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, we got to get back to like recognizing the humanity in each other and just like get down to the basics. It's like, there's no reason for us to just like start categorizing each other.
Mm.
And it's like, can we just like try to learn from each other and just try to love each other somehow, find our common humanity in whatever way we can?
Like that. I like, the history instead of just the person that's in front of you. They've got a long
Mm.
history you don't know about,
Yeah.
so just starting there and moving forward. Yeah, no, and it humanizes everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
it's kind of like maybe God intends us to be this way, like where we actually can recognize the humanity in each other. Well, that was like one of my favorite things from the Thomas J. Ord interview, which I posted today from the Wax Museum, is he said the image of God in us is the image of love. And he's like, but it's like a capacity to love. Like that image that's in us is a capacity for every human to love.
Okay.
And God is love. So he can never choose to not love. But we as humans can choose to not love. And we choose that all the time. And
image of God is the capacity to love.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's written in your DNA. I'm like, that's a beautiful thing.
And how often do we reject that? And then that just leads to gross. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about pranks of the Bible.
Oh, I'm here for it. Let's go.
Okay, pranks of the Bible. Okay, so I mean, okay, so I just there's a lot of like situations where so I'm not a fan of practical jokes. I think they're dumb, and I like to make fun of the idea of a practical joke.
Okay.
And I always want to talk about like, oh, okay, haha, I stabbed you. Funny, right? And so I was thinking in terms of pranks of the Bible. Oh, I should have written down some of them. But like, I mean, you can look at like Jacob and Esau, and it's like, yeah, he totally pranked his dad by wearing like the furry arm thing.
Yeah. Okay. Big consequences there. I mean, do you want to go like Abraham and Isaac was like a bit of a punk on
that
Isaac?
Totally was. Yeah, no, that was the one I wanted to talk about. Okay. It's like when God pranked Abraham. Yeah. Hilarious. It's like, I want you to kill your child. And then it's like, no, just kidding.
Oh my gosh. I was going smaller with like when Jesus, they didn't recognize Jesus after he was resurrected. And he was like, he made like he was going to go a little bit further, like, bye guys. And they were like, no, come stay with us. Or, when he's walking on the water, he meant to pass them by. And then he got in the boat, like just little stuff like that. But yeah, Abraham and Isaac is the ultimate prank. Well, I guess Jesus being dead for 3 days and coming back is a pretty good one. At least that one went positively. But the pranks of the Bible.
Punk X. Yeah, I wish I had like a comprehensive list, but hey, this would be something, if we have any listeners.
Yes.
Tell us what pranks of the Bible you think are hilarious.
What's your favorite?
What's your favorite prank of the Bible?
Twitter.
In fact, I will ask that on the ADD Masterminds Twitter account. I'll ask, what's your favorite prank of the Bible? And if you don't know what we're talking about, you have to listen to the podcast episode.
There you go. That'll make sense.
I'll make it a thread. All right. I wanted to talk about free the nipple without getting political. But I understand. Okay, so we're talking about how like it is deemed unfair that men can show their nipples in public, but women can't.
Right.
And this is kind of fascinating because I was talking to a young adult, and they were saying that breasts are not a sex object.
Right.
They have a functionality, and to see them as a sex object is a fetish. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense because like I know that I can see them as sexual. Maybe that's my own fetish, right? But like when a woman's breastfeeding, I'm like, I have to turn that off right now. Like I cannot see it that way, right? Like I am a messed up human being if I see it that way, right? And I'm able to. Like I'm not like, and even art, like I can look at art and say that's beautiful, but I'm not like seeing it that way. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But here's my beef with Free the Nipple movement, okay? Is that these women are going to formal events and they're like, I am free my nipples. And I'm like, I don't see the guys doing that. Like, you don't have like Brad Pitt. And it's like, I'm going to the Oscars, but I'm going to go shirtless because I got to show everybody my nipples. So I'm like, I don't know if this is like quite even Steven. Like maybe they could do it more in a casual way.
Interesting. Okay. Now I need a sec. I'm like, all right. I'll go. Yes, like biologically, I think dudes are attracted to boobs because it's
Right.
like the psychological she'll be able to feed my baby type thing,
Oh, is that what
which
it is?
I'm pretty
That's
sure.
really sweet of guys to see it
Right.
that way. You know,
Thank
they're
you so
thinking of the
much.
children
Right? It's
when
but
they
like
fetishize that.
that's where it comes from, like from caveman days, right? Or like liking like curvy, is like she's, psychologically you
Yeah.
don't realize it. It's she's got birthing hips, she can have, she
Yeah.
can bear my children.
It's an
Um,
evolutionary thing.
right. I can't remember what book I read about it, but it was true. Um, but the idea, yeah, okay. Yeah, there was an actress recently who went wherever and like the dress was very sheer and she was like, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that's a really good point that I can't think of the last time I saw a dude on the red carpet. Like I wore my pants but no shirt. I mean, it probably happens. Every now and then there's that sheer shirt, but like no, in in a situation like that, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's just a funny
Uh,
thing to like
no,
to
you
have a
brought up a
beef with
good
it on that
point.
angle. I'm not siding with anyone on this argument. I'm
Like,
just saying it just seems like it's not the same. So it's more of
right.
an like funny
Like you've moved
observation
from
than an actual.
equality to like now I'm making a stink over it. And is it because you have a platform? Maybe, but
Yeah.
interesting.
People
I
be silly.
didn't know where that was going when it started. Glad to be the girl here for that one.
Yeah. Now we're done talking about nipples.
Okay.
You can unplug your ears now. All right. Sunk cost fallacy. Have you heard this term before?
Yes,
Yeah.
I always find it fascinating. And I never remember what it means at first.
So
But
it's like just basically you get to a certain point in a project
yeah,
um, at which it's like you've invested so much into it. You know that it's a useless project, but you're like, but I invested so much in it.
you got to finish. Okay.
Yeah.
I do
And
that with
so,
movies.
sorry?
I do that with movies. Like
Yeah.
I'm an hour and a half in. I got to get that last 45.
My gosh. I do
Interesting.
that a lot with movies and books. Like I'll
Yeah.
start reading a book and I'm like, no, I got to finish it.
It
And
takes
it's
a
like,
lot for me to put a book down and
yeah,
say I'm not going to finish it. It takes a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. So,
Sunken cost
I mean, how do
fallacy.
we, I think just knowing the term,
Mm.
like, it's one of those, like, if you actually have awareness, that's probably the best way to combat it. Cause they're like, I could just stop this right now. I mean, it's funny because like this week, I've been like very emotionally drained due to some personal stuff.
Right.
And I get up and I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta do this, gotta do that. And like, one of my family members is like, that you're off, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, oh yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I am off. Maybe I should only do the things I absolutely have to, like podcasting.
You have to do it.
Yeah. But it's like, but I gotta read, for my next podcast guest that's happening in 6 weeks. And it's like, no, I don't. No, I
No.
don't.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know if that's sunk cost fallacy, but it's like knowing that if I'm actually aware that it's like I'm off, I don't have to be doing all the stuff that I'm making myself do and just press the red button. It's like
Right,
I'm
right,
going to
right.
stop and I need to reevaluate. I think when it comes to sunk cost fallacy, it's the same thing where it's like I don't need to keep putting money or keep putting time into this fruitless project. And we can
Right.
do that. And it seems like there's something in us that says we can't do that.
Like, is it just the anti-quitting, mindset of I mean, maybe if it's something that's the experiment of like, let's see, how this goes. I have this idea. Maybe it's just reached, all right, we gave it a try,
Yeah.
and this is where it ends. Like, is it okay to just stop and not necessarily call it quitting, but just call it the end if you need to.
Well, I think part of it too is that like failure in itself is something that can be worthwhile if you use it the right way.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
it's like if you complete it to success, you now wasted the entire time that you did the project. But if you quit halfway through, you can say, all right, I failed, and this is what I learned from the failure. And you actually build on that failure, right? You can then say,
Right.
I
You can
learned
move to
something
another, yeah,
by failing. And
right.
so, and I think that's if we look at like how God works, I've had some failures. Like the last week, I've had some failures, but I've been able to like draw from that and be like, okay, so what have I learned? And I'm like, I've learned that there's certain toxic things in my life I need to get rid of.
Mhm.
And so I've gotten rid of those toxic things, and I feel like a different person in a
Yeah.
positive way. Um, and so I think failure is something you can learn from, and maybe that's what it is the antidote to sunk cost fallacy is to actually decide that failure is something to learn from.
I
I
think
think I think I just
seeing
solved it.
that you solved it, you fixed it,
Yeah.
it's done. Seeing the time that you can get back, like maybe you've invested 100 hours into
Yeah.
something and you're like, well, I'm in too deep. Well, you can redeem the next 50. If that's sunken cost, we can float, cost the next 50 by not investing it in this thing that isn't going to go anywhere. And then
And
maybe put that into something else.
I think that's true with relationships too. Like there's some relationships that fail.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm talking friendships. I
sure,
know
sure.
I don't want to get into like God hates divorce. We won't get into that.
No.
But there's friendships that you're like, okay, well, that was a friendship for a season. I wouldn't even say like I think there's a sunk cost fallacy with relationships where you can be like, oh, but we do talk every Friday
Right,
or whatever. And then
right.
it's like, okay, but like should we be talking every Friday? Like this is getting bad. Our relationship's not
Mm,
working. And so then you can like say, okay, like let's end this. And then be
yeah,
able to say, okay, so these are the things, like these are the positive things that happened in this relationship that helped me.
yeah,
And there's negative things that I've learned from. I'm learning,
right,
I need
right,
to have boundaries. And so that's what I've learned from this relationship.
right.
But I mean, like there were things that challenged me. And it's like, it's funny how like toxic people who are toxic for whatever reason, I'm initially drawn to them because they're saying things that no one else is saying. And that's interesting to me.
Okay.
But it's like those type of relationships burn out over
Yeah,
time, where
yeah,
it's just like you realize this is so draining to me. And
yeah.
so it's just kind of like you kind of have that friendship with the toxic person for a season,
Yeah.
and that season ends. And I don't
Mm.
know. It's the weird thing too is like I was thinking in terms of like girlfriend relationships I've had.
Okay.
And every girl that I dated, she broke up with me at some point. And then like some of them were like wanting to date again. And I was like, no, you only get one chance. Like that's it. Like I'm like, you decided you don't want to be with me, it's over.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And I,
right.
I never, I never gave a person a second chance. And
Huh.
I'm like, I don't know if that was, a good thing necessarily, but I'm just like, yeah, no, been there, done that. Like we're good.
All right.
And so, and I think with friendships, it's kind of been the same way too. It's like there's people that I'm just like, yeah, we just can't hang out anymore. And I've never like revisited those relationships because they ended for a reason.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a couple of friendship breakups, and it's not like I weighed, that sunken cost at the time.
Yeah.
That it was just kind of like, nope, here's a fight and we're done, cut ties. One or two, like one, I'd say that I was like, all right, we'll give this another shot. And it still fizzled out. And, so it was kind of like, all right, then that wasn't meant to be. We tried two times. But definitely in the past, I mean, these were friends that we were very, very close to. Like my
Yeah.
husband and I were together,
Yeah.
like real, they were in our wedding, friends that we
Yeah.
were best friends with. And it took years before I was able to go, you know what? It ended badly, but I can see how it could have been worse if we had stayed friends
Yeah.
longer. It would have given the opportunity for other stuff that I'm like, we were newly married when we all broke up. I'm like, what if we
Yeah.
had had our kids and
Yeah.
now, these little kids have these aunts and uncles that all of a
Yeah.
sudden aren't coming around anymore. But
Yeah.
I'm also now able to look back and go, we had so much fun. And that was
Yeah.
fun in the time. And that was a great experience. And we had a great, run. And that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
That value's not gone. It's
Yeah.
just not here now, so I'm
Yeah.
able to, it's tough. I miss it sometimes, but I also know that it's gone for a
Yeah.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like every person that we invite into our life changes us in some way.
Right.
And so, I mean, there's positive change that comes from these relationships. And then it's like, okay, it took its course. And now I can wish you well without me.
Right.
And I'm going to
Right.
get on with my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Oof.
almost like they outgrow us, we outgrow them. And it's part of the journey.
It happens,
Yeah.
and
So, like another thing, there's like this phenomenon, which is kind of similar to sunk cost fallacy. It's like
uh-huh.
people being wrong about something and then they double down when confronted. And it's like we kind of have this inclination to do so.
Yeah.
And it's fighting that. Um,
I
and I
see
think,
this a lot. Do they not
yeah.
get the wrongness, or are they like, well, I'm already here, so I'm just gonna double down and stay wrong louder. Like,
I
I don't know which
feel
way it
like a
goes.
lot of it centers around pride. And
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people who seem to invest a lot of their self-esteem in their beliefs.
Yes.
And so they'll have something like let's let's take a conspiracy theory that's not
Okay.
scary.
Okay.
So it's like Sasquatch. Sasquatch is real. And people try to disprove them all the time. And they're like, no, 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 no. I've been telling everyone. Maybe it's a sunk cost fallacy too. Because
Yeah.
I've gone around telling everyone that Sasquatch is real. And even
Right.
though they've definitely proven that he physically can't exist, right? Let's
Right.
just
Right.
say there was some magic way that they were able to physically prove he
Physically
doesn't
prove it.
exist. I mean, it's like the whole theory of evolution versus creationism, where it's like, okay, well, the Bible, somehow people have read the Bible and said, the Bible says the
Right.
earth is only this many years old,
Mhm.
which I'm like, I don't know. Like, you guys just like traced it back generations. And then you were like, okay, so this is when the earth began.
Right.
I haven't done the math. I don't have any interest in doing the math, but okay. So then carbon dating, says
Yes.
that
Comes
the earth
around.
is much more older. And people are like doubling down because
Mhm.
they're like, no, no, no. This is how I read the Bible. And the Bible is absolutely perfect in every way. That, I mean, all of that, I'm like, I don't understand, but okay.
Right. Right.
Um, and so they will double down when confronted because they've invested their whole identity in answers in Genesis.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just like, what do we invest our identity in?
Is that cognitive dissonance as well? When
Yeah.
you're like, just so invested in something that even when confronted with, contradicting factoids, it's like, nah, that can't possibly be true. Just clinging to it. I mean, when it's something that's so, I'm still stuck on Sasquatch. I'm sorry. I watched too many of those documentaries and I love it. That because they believe it's true, like I can casually go, sure, there's something out there. I believe the Loch Ness monster is real. I'll tell you. Like I absolutely do. Non-ironically. But if someone was to go like, look, we did this thing, we drained it, and she ain't there, it's not going to ruin everything. But someone that
Mm.
believes something that's a conspiracy theory that strongly believes there's that much a cover up, take so much space. It takes up your trust of literally everything. So something such just that could really shift your entire worldview. Ugh,
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it
people are
too, like the
silly.
thing with cognitive dissonance is that like it's been proven to be physically painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like people are averse to that pain.
Hmm.
And I mean, I think it depends on your personality type too. Cause like
Sure.
for me, being an Enneagram 4,
Hmm.
it's like I am my emotions
Yeah.
and I love pain. Like I love taking on other people's pain. I love working through my own pain in a
Yeah.
way, although I'd rather work through other people's pain. Um, and so I am okay with living in this constant state of cognitive dissonance and being able to
Mm.
say, there's people that think this and there's people who think that. And I'm like, I don't know. I like to weigh out both of them and say, maybe they're both a possibility, or,
Right.
and I'll live there. But there's other people who don't have the emotional bandwidth to do that. And so they want to just pick a side and they
Yeah.
live there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it allows their brain to have resources to do things that my brain can't, like day to day stuff.
You don't have the day-to-day brain
I
strength.
don't have the day to day brain. I'm like,
The
I
big
have to,
stuff.
yeah, well, I mean, day to day stuff, I have to really figure out how to make all of that automatic because I just physically can't think about it.
Okay.
And
Hence
so,
the ADD.
yeah, I need like a certain amount of structure to function.
Okay.
And so, like, if there's anything like, you know, the dishes aren't done, I'm like, okay, I can't think.
Until
Brain
that.
not
Yep.
working.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And so, but I think other people, I don't know, I imagine for other people, that's not as big of a deal because their brains are like not debating everything ever all the time.
Oh boy.
It's bad. It's bad. And so it's like, how do I take a break from that? And maybe that's what it is. Like on my days off, it's like, how do I actually allow my brain to not be doing that all the time? Because
Like, how
it's
do you force
complex.
quiet?
Yeah, complex
Yeah.
calculations. But it's like I think finding a form of meditation, and I think like for me, like a form of meditation is just like I go for a walk,
Mhm.
no headphones. I'm not listening to music. I'm not listening to podcasts.
That's brave.
Just going for a walk,
Yeah.
and it just kind of I guess slows my brain down a bit. I might still think about things, but it's just like
Yeah.
I'm not as amped, and so all right. Mother Teresa was pretty cool.
She was a good lady. I liked
Yeah.
her.
Um, it was really interesting. She said God does not call you to be successful, but to be faithful. And I was thinking like
Mm.
I mean that's it like with what what I do,
Right.
in my spare time. It's like it's not about success.
Mhm.
Like I'm not I don't know like ADD Masterminds. Like we don't
Yeah.
have a huge listener base, but I
Mhm.
feel like I just have to do this,
You
you
put it
know?
out there, you do what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do.
Yeah.
I think, success is what we feel like we can measure to know that
Mm,
we're doing a good job. And just so much of it is handing it over, I feel. And like, even the God gives the increase, stuff from the Bible of just if
mm.
you're faithful to Jesus, he'll make it successful, or just count on him to tally that up. Like you do your part and he'll keep the books on whether it's successful or not.
Well, and it doesn't have to be successful, right? Like
No.
it's like we were talking about like I can't remember what it might have been Joyce Myers who was like at this event and she's just like, "Well, at first I wasn't a success. I only had like 8 people in my Bible study." And it's like, "So that's not success? Like to
Mm,
have 8 people in your Bible study, shame on you?"
right, right.
And it's like, "No. Like
Because
I
someone somewhere has one or maybe two, and
I
eight would
had
be
one.
a dream. Yeah,
I had a Bible study that was one person
one
that would show
person.
up. And I was like, I just kept doing it. I'm like, I'm
And
going to
you
be
were
faithful.
faithful, and God
Yeah.
gives the increase. Absolutely.
And so I'm like, yeah, ADD Masterminds, way bigger than one.
You've
I've more than doubled my
more
listenership.
than double. Nice.
More than doubled. Not to
Since
brag.
doubling your gender representation, maybe.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah. But it's like it's funny because I overheard a conversation where this guy was talking about like how this dude got a promotion. And it's like, yeah, well, he took on this promotion because he believes that every 5 years you need to show that you've taken the next step so that people can see that you're taking the next step each time. And I'm like, why though? Like, is this the track to become a CEO, or like what's the end goal?
Huh.
Like you're living for your resume so that
Yeah,
your
for the
resume
next
shows
job,
every 5 years.
you did something else so that you
Yeah.
can
And
get to something else.
I'm just doing what I enjoy.
Ugh, I don't love that. That hamster wheel nonsense. I don't
Yeah.
like that. Like my boss thanked me for something the other day. And like that was enough. I floated off of that on forever. We
Oh,
work with
me too.
kids. We
Me
work
too.
with
That made
kids
my
and
day.
she's a really tough baby, but I knew you would have
Yeah.
the patience for her, so thank
Yeah.
you. And I was like, ah, okay, I was
Yeah.
good at that, you know, but like
Yeah.
no, just to constantly to work so that you can move to something else, so that you can move to something else. I can't,
Yeah.
no, that makes me itch. Can't do
Yeah.
it.
And I know a lot of people like that.
Sure.
And I think like that's where too, like having variety in your work helps. Cause like for me, my work has quite a bit of variety to it. And so I'm just like, yeah, I like what I do. I'm not bored of it. If
Right.
I ever get bored of it, I'll move
Right.
on. But like I am not trying to impress anybody
Yeah.
with my resume. Like I'm just like my resume is what it is. And
Right. Right. No, yeah. If you're bored and you want to make sure you go move to something new every 3, 5, whatever years, sure, go for it. But to move just to move, no.
so I'm gonna say the best thing I did this week is I deactivated a couple of Twitter accounts that I have. And one of them was like kind of a troll account. And I realized um after being confronted about it that like it's really an acting out of all the pain I have from not setting proper boundaries in my life.
Okay.
And and I think like it's kind of in the realm of rage farming. And it's like, okay, this person said this idiot thing. And so I'm going to attack them in a way that I normally wouldn't, that the real
Right.
me
Right.
wouldn't,
Yeah.
but this person would. It's a character I'm playing. And
Right.
it's really challenged me to be, a fully integrated person. It's like there should not be a part of me that I hide from the public.
Yeah.
And it's like, so being a fully integrated human being, if I see something on Twitter that bothers me,
Yeah.
I have the option to either mute it or address it in
Yeah.
a tactful way.
Yeah.
And learning like my own boundaries with that for
Okay.
real, instead of taking on this character that says the outlandish thing just to see what everyone's reaction is.
Yeah.
And it was just the worst version of myself.
Mm.
And I'm thankful. And I think I still do need to go through, counseling and therapy to work on boundaries, but I feel like this was like a massive step for me, is to
Good.
like, because it's actually cleared up other vices. Like I have no desire for these other vices. Like my
Mhm.
dark side is
Yeah.
gone, and
Awesome.
it's incredible.
That's no, that's fantastic. I've taken to just blocking a ton of people that I don't even really interact with just because I
Yeah.
don't want to. Like
Yeah.
some, I'm not going to get political, but some certain
Yeah.
representatives and accounts that I'm like, I don't want to feel like I quote like have to correct them. I
Yeah.
don't want to feel like I have to, be like, your one brain cell is so lonely. Like I don't want to do that. I don't want to
Yeah.
waste my time on that. I don't want to have to hear what they have to say at all. I don't want it to. So just a ton of people that have literally nothing to do with me. Or every now and then I'll see an account, probably like your troll account, that's just out there to be, like
Mhm.
to start something or be mean. I'm like, I don't want to ever feel the need to interact with this. So I'm
Yeah.
just going to block everybody. And
Yeah.
it's been great.
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
just
Well,
less.
I think like we spend so much time talking about what we're against.
Mm.
And it's like, can
Mm.
we focus on what we're for?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm kind of tired of criticizing everything, every structure, every theology. And I just want to find a way forward and model that way forward.
Mm.
And I wanted to do that before, but I'm thankful for that awful confrontation that
Mm.
challenged me to get rid of that part of my persona.
Good.
And it's like, so that dark side, that part that wants to attack now has to do that in public
Mm.
because I'm like, I'm not going to bring back those troll accounts. That's an immature thing. That's
Yeah.
teenager me acting out.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, I am a man now. I'm not going to do that.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Oh, so, okay. I like, okay, when people talk about like, you know, how somebody makes a mean something, right? So it's
Okay.
like, she makes a mean meatloaf. Or he makes, let's be inclusive, he
Yeah.
makes a mean meatloaf,
There we go.
right? I just like the whole like, what if you take it next level, right? And there's like, he makes a mean meatloaf, and it's like, yeah, it's downright nasty.
It is so rude. Like, can we make rude food? Maybe? I don't know.
Rude food.
Why is it mean? You know,
Oh, there's like, have you ever heard about that restaurant where they're just
meat's
like
chicken
mean to you?
cutlets, and they're just, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, where is that? I
Is
can't
it New
remember.
York?
That's all of them, isn't it? I can
I
say that
love
I
that
live
you live so
here.
close to New York. I just
Yeah.
like New York is just so legendary. I'm like, that's kind of fun.
Like I can much, well, no, but yeah, very close. I was gonna say, much like Sarah Palin, who can see Russia from her house, I can see New York City. It's right there.
Yeah.
But I was afraid that'd be political.
Does she still live there?
I don't think she would ever leave Alaska.
Okay, so I like actually when we went on our cruise to Alaska,
Mhm.
we did this like bus tour, and it was the most depressing um tour guide ever. Yeah. So the guy's like, we're driving around,
This
and
is
he's like,
Alaska.
there's the governor's house, and it's like, okay. And then he's like, and there's the bridge to nowhere. They spend all this money on it.
That's right.
Yeah. And then he's
Oh my
like,
God, that's right.
and there's the Walmart. He's like, eventually this Walmart's going to disappear because this town is just dying. And then he's like, so now we're going to go see the waterfalls, but enjoy them while you can because they're going to dry up.
That's awful.
And it was so funny because it was just like, this was the worst tour ever. And I'm like, are you kidding?
Wow.
I loved it. I'm like,
I want to,
I don't want people to be fake glowing about everything. I thought I was like so entertained. It was like it was just awesome.
I want to know if he found that funny, like a character, or if he was genuinely like, yeah, we're all going to hell in a handbasket. Enjoy the waterfalls.
He seemed genuinely
Genuine.
depressed. And
Nice.
now I feel kind of sad for him.
Oh. Well, we're all dying, so he won't have to be sad for long.
I like how when
Poor
people
dude.
say like gift, it sounds like GIF.
Mhm. Unless you say GIF,
Yeah,
which I don't like, but
not to
I,
get political, but like, dude, because the dude that invented GIFs
yeah,
says that it's pronounced GIF.
like I know that GIF is right. I just don't like it.
Hard disagree though, because we don't say graphic
Yeah,
interface.
right.
It's graphic interface. So I stand by GIF.
Now I'm thinking of giraffes though, and that's a GIF.
It's kind of interesting though, like even like
Uh,
pronunciation of things, it's like it's so regional and it
mm,
differs between cultures.
yeah,
And there's like a certain level of like where we insist on people pronouncing, you know, things a certain way
yeah.
is like trying to make our culture dominant without getting political.
Can we just say that after every single topic?
I know that's how
Um,
I get away from saying with saying
I love it.
something
No, and
political.
I find it interesting when like two people in a conversation, specifically like in a podcast conversation, will say things two different ways and just keep going with it. And I again appreciate, I said this last time, when podcasters won't make fun of somebody for stuttering or mispronouncing or dropping a word, I'm always like, you're more mature than I am, because I'd be like, ah. But the conversations where one person saying GIF constantly, one person saying GIF constantly, and they're just gonna let it go. That's just how we each say these things. Biopic and biopic. It two different ways, same conversation. How do these people just let it happen? Like eventually I'd be like, one of us needs to accommodate the other, because this is making me too crazy.
I have never heard biopic. That's
I
interesting.
Yeah, I heard it was some podcast and it was biopic, and I was like, is that not like something that happens to your eyes, when you get older? I don't know.
There was like such an interesting word that Thomas J. Ord came up with. And it was talking about like, I think it was like omnipotent.
Omnipotent.
Yeah, but it was like he came up with another word and I
That's-
screwed it up. And it was so funny because I'm like asking him the question. And like, mind you, like this is the Wax Museum. It's supposed
yeah,
to be the serious
this is the
podcast.
serious one.
So
Yeah.
I asked him this question, and it's funny because I'm like, the whole time I'm like, I'm talking to all these like brilliant theologians, and I'm like, I'm not a theologian. Like, I'm just like, not even sure what to do with the Bible half the time. Right.
Right.
And and so I'm like talking to him, and I say the word and I screwed it up. And then I'm like, oh, try this again. And then I said it again. And then I'm like, so he's like, oh, actually, it's a hard word to say, but I made it up myself. It's blah, blah, blah. And then he like explains the whole thing.
You made it up.
He made it up. Yeah. So it's like
Interesting. Okay.
in between omnipotent and
Hmm.
like whatever the opposite of omnipotent is. I'm totally butchering this. It might not even been potent. It's like omniscient, omnipotent. It was either omniscient or omnipotent. Um, but he said like, so there's whatever the opposite of omnipotent is, and
Okay.
he said like ami, so like between the two, right? And so it was
Oh.
really hard to add that prefix to that suffix. And so when I said
Hmm.
it, I screwed it up twice, and then I thought, okay, I'm just gonna make this a bit.
Just
And
gonna
then
go.
he
Yeah. Okay.
explained the whole thing brilliantly. And then after that, I'm like, okay, one more time. And then I
Lay it
said it
on
right.
me.
And he's like, good. It's a that's the professor. So I was
Well
like, that's
done.
the one like very actually there's a lot of comedic parts to that. It
Yeah.
was a big interview. Like I was told it was a big interview by a lot of people. And so I was like, okay. I don't think I was really nervous. I just tried to be super casual with the
Mhm.
dude.
The
I
dude.
just tried to be myself. Yeah. All right. Oh, I like this. Instead of jumping into what everyone else is doing,
Mhm.
um, or instead of jumping into what everyone else is talking about and making a small contribution, talk about something no one else is talking about and make a big contribution.
Well, I think that nobody could come up with a better example than how we opened the show with Keanu Reeves, which everyone is talking about, and then Pranks of the Bible, which no one is talking about. like, like we are the heads of the Pranks of the Bible field right now.
This show is weird.
So weird.
How do you like okay, so emotional intelligence. That's
Mm.
a term that I really like. Do you have any idea what it means?
Um, I always associate it with that marshmallow test that they
Oh, yeah.
reference a lot. Like that's supposed to be how you measure EQ, is your ability to delay gratification or something like that. But
Really?
yes, that's what they say with the kids and the marshmallow tests and stuff like that.
So,
For me, I feel like if you're able to maybe name what you're feeling more and put aside what you need to and make a healthier choice for yourself, I see that more as an emotional intelligence. Like if a friend of mine's going through a divorce, it's a whole thing, but she is able to like we weren't happy. It's fine. He's finding somebody else, and I want him happy. And I want my kids to
Mm,
have a happy father with a happy stepmother. Like that's incredibly emotionally mature and intelligent to me. But I
okay.
believe it's like basis is the marshmallow test. I could be wrong.
That's
Write in and let
interesting.
me know if we're wrong
So
on
you're
that
kind of
one.
taking like an emotional maturity angle to emotional intelligence. And I think of
Mm.
like, I want to go straight to emotional intelligence is understanding the emotions of others, like being
Oh,
able to
okay.
read a room and stuff like that. But,
Okay.
perhaps it's both.
Yeah, I mean it can be both. It can be there's a secret third thing. There could be, a lot of options going around. But yeah, being emotional intelligence, I did go more emotional maturity, but dealing with other people's emotions is a minefield, really. Very tricky.
It is a minefield. Like, and I'm realizing like as an empath, like you can dose.
Mm,
Like I it's like that whole like break my heart for what breaks yours.
mm.
And it's like you can take that too far when you're like incapacitated by other
Yeah,
people's pain.
yeah,
And it's like you actually can figure out how to go only as deep as you need to be
yeah.
functional, like to actually help that person. Like if you've got the baby crying and you're like 100% empath, you
Hmm.
start crying too.
Right.
And
Yes,
that
yes.
is silly.
So silly.
So
Uh,
it's like finding kind of that depth that you can go to because like if you're cold and don't relate to the baby at all, that's not helpful either.
right.
And so like parenting is a huge thing in understanding like
Mm.
what level of empathy is appropriate.
Right. What's going to be helpful,
Hmm.
what might hinder their own growth. I initially always want to, take care of people, and I've had to do a lot of work not to care less, but to just
Hmm.
feel less responsible for
Hmm.
other
Hmm.
people's issues.
Boundaries.
Or exactly,
Yeah.
we had a friend years ago who was injured, and I say friend, it was someone we hadn't seen in several years. We had been very close. We hadn't really talked in a while, but he was injured, and I was like, do I have to go like help? Like initially, and if he had called me out of all people and been like, I need you to help me out, sure. But my husband was like, he has a family, like he has friends, and we're not in that inner circle of people. So being able to just be like, no, no, my immediate responsibility is this, and then if I'm called, I will go.
Yeah.
But to be able to go like, oof, that sucks, and if you need me, I'm here, but not to initially feel like, what can I do to fix this for you? I have to drop
Yeah.
everything to go help this person I haven't talked to in 2 years. I don't know why that's something that's always in my head that I'm responsible for. But the emotional intelligence of like, no, they have people, and if they need me, they'll call me. I'm not abandoning anybody. But yeah, don't cry when the baby cries.
Yeah.
That's very silly.
Well, I think like part of it too is like sobriety is a huge thing and like whatever it is. And like I think for some it's substances, for others it's like pornography, or it
Sure.
could be just like certain types of television that are like just mind numbing that isn't
Yeah.
really something you feel like is beneficial to you. Like it's escapism. Like any
Yeah.
type of escapism, I think is something that can become a vice where you're not actually adequately dealing with your emotional issues. And so for me, I find when I have a period of sobriety, which I'm on right now,
Mhm.
I'm like a lot more sensitive and I'm figuring out how to deal with that high sensitivity. And like I love Susan David is like one of my favorite psychologists ever.
Yeah.
And she says emotions are data, not directives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the proper
It's
place
so good. Yeah.
for our own emotional data, but I think it's the proper place for other people's emotional data too. Is like, okay, so how do we use this data to diagnose and like actually find a constructive way to move forward? And part of it too is like to get used to the fact that emotions come in waves and we got to ride that wave out
Right. Right.
and we'll be okay. I know it feels like you're going to die right now, but you got
Yeah.
to ride it out just like the baby. You look at the baby and you're like, I know you feel like you're dying right now,
Yeah.
but it's like, we'll ride this out. I will hold your hand as we ride this out together. And I
Right.
think that is how we come to healing.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. All of that. Yes. Ugh,
Well, thank you, the girl. This was fun.
this was fun. Thank you.
This
Appreciate it.
felt more deep than silly.
I feel like it always, it always ends up getting a little deeper than we expected, but
Yeah.
always still fun.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll do this again in a couple weeks.
Can't wait.
Lord willing.
Yes. And once again, thank God Keanu Reeves walks among us.
That's right. Take that, Matthew Perry.
Air smudge.